Have you ever heard that saying, all that glitters is not gold? Well, today we're diving into a story that takes that saying to a whole new level. We're going deep into the world of corporate collapses, big money, and the people who are supposed to protect investors when things go wrong.
Right.
And let me tell you, things get complicated.
What's really interesting here is that we're looking at a situation where the very people entrusted with upholding the system might be the ones exploiting it.
Right.
It's a story that could make anyone think twice about who they trust with their money.
Absolutely. Our deep dive today is based on excerpts from an investigative report called Carrie and James and the High Street Group Collapse.
Okay.
Put together by a firm called Insolvency Law, INL for short.
This report raises some serious red flags about Carrie and James, the top insolvency practitioner, and her role in the collapse of this company.
To set the stage, High Street Group was in the business of property investment, and they offered these things called loan notes.
Okay.
Which were supposed to be backed by property assets.
Right.
It's pretty straightforward, right?
Except over 1,000 investors lost a total of £126 million when the company went under.
Wow.
Imagine your life savings, your retirement fund, all gone.
Yeah.
That's the reality for a lot of people caught up in this mess.
It's a devastating situation.
It is.
And that's where Carrie Ann James comes in.
Right.
She was appointed by the court to be the administrator for High Street Group when it collapsed. She's a big name in the insolvency world. She even serves as president of the Insolvency Practitioners Association.
Okay.
On paper, she seems like the perfect person to handle this kind of situation.
She's also an officer of the court, which means she's bound by a strict code of ethics.
Yeah.
And has a duty to act in the best interests of the creditors, the people who lost money.
But that's where things get murky.
Oh.
INL claims that instead of helping investors recover their money, James may have actually helped the company's director, Gary Forrest, slip away without facing any real consequences.
That's a pretty serious accusation. It's like finding out the security guard at the bank was actually helping the robbers escape with the loot.
Exactly. So let's unpack what happened during the administration process.
Okay.
The administrator's job is to step in when a company goes bankrupt.
Right.
And try to either rescue the company or, if that's not possible, make sure the creditors get as much of their money back as possible.
Right.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. But INL argues that James's administration was a complete failure. They claim it achieved absolutely nothing for the investors.
Wow.
And actually delayed the necessary liquidation of the company by a full 3 years.
3 years.
One of INL's consultants, Peter Murray, even said that administration was the wrong approach right from the get-go.
3 years is a long time to wait for answers, especially when you've lost everything.
And it gets worse.
Oh, no.
Despite investors losing £126 million, Carrie Ann James didn't recover a single penny for them.
Hold on.
Not one.
How is that even possible? You'd think with that much money lost, there'd be something to recover.
That's what's so alarming about this case.
Yeah.
INL claims James didn't take any legal action against Gary Forrest, even though it looks like he might have shifted assets out of High Street Group before it went bust.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Imagine you owe someone money, and right before you declare bankruptcy, you transfer all your valuable possessions to a friend.
Oh.
That's essentially what INL is suggesting Forrest might have done.
So he potentially hid his assets while investors were left with nothing.
That's the allegation.
Wow.
And these asset transfers, particularly to a company called Hadrian Real Estate Fall, allegedly happened at prices way below market value.
Yeah.
Leaving the investors with absolutely no protection. Remember, those loan notes were supposed to be secured against the property assets.
Right.
Meaning if the company went under, investors could at least get something back by selling those properties.
Yeah.
But if the properties were sold off cheaply or the valuations were inflated to begin with, then the security was basically worthless.
Right, so like buying a theft-proof bike lock, only to find out it's made of plastic.
Exactly.
The protection you thought you had was an illusion.
And INL believes Carrie Ann James, as the administrator, should have seen these red flags.
So they're saying she should have known, like, she should have been able to spot this stuff.
Absolutely.
As an experienced insolvency practitioner, she had a duty to thoroughly investigate High Street Group's finances.
Right.
INL argues that she should have spotted these issues early on.
Yes.
The potentially overvalued properties, the lack of real security for the loan notes.
Right.
And taken action to protect the investors.
Yeah.
So are they saying she deliberately looked the other way?
They don't explicitly say that.
Okay.
But they do raise the question of whether she might have been pressured by Gary Forrest to keep things quiet.
Okay, so we've got these questionable asset transfers.
Right.
No money recovered for investors.
Right.
And a whole lot of unanswered questions.
Yes.
What did INL do to try and get to the bottom of this?
They tried to use a legal tool called a Norwich Pharmacal Order.
Oh, what?
A Norwich Pharmacal Order, or NPO.
Okay.
Which is essentially a court order that forces someone to hand over information.
So INL went to court to try and force Carrie Ann James to reveal what she knew.
Exactly.
Okay.
At first, James agreed to cooperate. But then she demanded a ridiculous amount of money to cover her costs.
Oh, wow.
Essentially making it impossible for INL to get the information.
Sounds like a classic delaying tactic.
It certainly raises that question.
Was she trying to stonewall the investigation?
It's possible.
And there's more.